On April 27, 1899, a white mob in Lee County, Georgia, lynched a black man named Mitchell Daniel for talking too much about the brutal lynching of Sam Hose, another black man, that had taken place days earlier on April 23rd. Just 4 days after Sam Hose's lynching, Mitchell Daniel's dead body was discovered on the side of a Lee County, Georgia road, riddled with bullets. Sparse local news reports attributed the lynching to Daniel's white neighbors, but no one was ever held accountable for his death.
This is the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 10, and it reads, For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Ayashah Barazal, prophet of doom from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone, coming back at you with another lesson that is edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. All right, before I get into this scripture, I just want to again declare fair use according to the Copyright Act of 1976 under the guidelines as stipulated in section 107 of said copyright. All right, it was presented at the beginning of the video. I just want to announce it audibly here as a safeguard, because we did use a YouTube short. All right. So, this scripture here, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, this is talking about the violence that Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has committed against Jake perpetually, since we've been over here, since we've been under his rulership, going all the way back to, 1492, and this devil has truly put hell on us. He is the sword of the Lord, according to Psalms 17:13, delving out that punishment for our transgressions of the law. All right. So this is talking about him, his violence against us. All right, your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And it says shame is going to cover him. Now in these last days, he is being exposed for everything that he's done. Nobody likes this dude. Except, you got some N-dubs who are going to go to the death with this Esau Edom, because they swear he's better than the Israelite man, especially a man from the tribe of Judah who is called a so-called black man, all right? And it says, that shame is going to cover them, and they're getting mad. That's why they want to stop it. Look at what Trump is doing now, cutting off any history where, Israelites have made impact in this world, in their system. They don't want you to look at them. The African American Museum, cutting off DEI programs, which we know that was really, Jake was the least one who was going to benefit from that. All right. And it says, and thou shalt be cut off forever. And, hey, once that recompense comes for all the things that you've done to us, Esau Edom, you're going into captivity for 1,000 years. You're going to serve twice as long and twice as hard, according to Revelation chapter 18, verse 5 and 6. And then after it's all said and done, once that time is up, hey, you're going to be exterminated. And the elites know this. And that extermination is mentioned right now in verse 18, all right, of this scripture. Let me get that. It says, and the house of Jacob should be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. Jacob being the southern kingdom, Joseph being the northern kingdom. Okay. And the house of Esau for stubble. All right. That's just, ash and anything, the remnant of whatever just burnt the hell up. All right. And they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh Bashem Yahushua has spoken it. This is also a cut to Edomites being saved. He just said, you won't be around. All right. once your captivity is up. You will not be around after you're done serving. All right. So without further ado, let me get into this article that I got. Slocky. This is from EJI, A History of Racial Justice, and I'll put a link to this article in the description box of the video. It says, it's titled, White Georgia Mob Lynches Man for Talking Too Much About Another Lynching. Damn, talk about making a man an offender for a word. Gee whiz. All right. Starting on with the article, it says, on April 27th, 1899, a white mob in Lee County, Georgia, lynched a black man named Mitchell Daniel for talking too much about the brutal lynching of Sam Holes, another black man that had taken place days earlier. Mr. Holes had been employed in Noonan, Georgia, by a wealthy white man named Alfred Cranford. Mr. Cranford owed Mr. Holes money but refused to pay him. And as arguments escalated between the two men, Mr. Cranford bought a gun and threatened Mr. Holes. When Mr. Cranford was killed soon after, Mr. Holes was accused of killing the white man and assaulting his wife. Soon an angry mob formed and set off to catch and lynch Mr. Holes. So there we go again, and accused, and he didn't pay him. You're supposed to pay a man for his wages. You're supposed to pay that man. At the end of the day, the sun is not supposed to go down. All right. If that man has worked, you're supposed to pay him. At the end of the day, you're not supposed to see it the next day. And that's another thing we got going on right now. Shoot, some of us get paid weekly, some of us get paid bi-weekly. All right, you're supposed to be paid the day that you work. That's according to the law. All right, and then you got this accusation here. That's what Esau does. This is Sirach or Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha. (11 to 7). It says, blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first and then rebuke. See, the only thing that was required was an accusation from the so-called white man. And Jake was going to die, period. That's just the way it was. A word. Like he did it, kill him. And you seeing, if you're paying attention to this Carmelo Anthony and this Austin Metcalf situation in Texas, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. All right, they just want him dead, and the kid, allegedly was defending himself, and that's what the police reports are saying. All right, back to the article. Yeah, and he said he assaulted his wife, so that was a no. That that white woman's supposed to be pure, and hey, she was getting it on with the slaves the whole time, and black men, period. When they got caught, they would say, women would say that he would rape her, and they don't kill him again anyway. Not again, but kill him anyway because of her, those white woman tears, as we call them. All right. It goes on. It says a $500 reward was posted for Mr. Holes' capture, and hundreds of white residents launched what was described as the largest manhunt in the state's history. Local newspapers published sensationalized accounts of the allegations against Mr. Holes, dehumanizing him and reinforcing dangerous stereotypes of black men as predators. That's that propaganda machine against Jake, even going all the way back to the late 1800s. And you say that mob got together. This is Exodus chapter 23. All right, begin at verse 1. It says, thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. And that's what Esau did, you know. Even the law is for the Israelites, but that's what he's guilty of, you know. This dude is everything contrary to our law, statutes, and commandments. All right. And you took that one accusation, and then you got, like I said, it was the largest one at that time, largest mob at that time for that type of situation. All right. And all of them are guilty of putting their hands with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. All right. It says, verse 2, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to rest judgment. And so, you know, once they heard it was a so-called black man and that did it, all of them agreed. You know, some of them probably didn't even know the guy's name, but just went to judgment, you know, said, no, he did it just because he's a so-called black man, but we know as an Israelite. All right. Back to the article. It says, many black people were lynched across the South under accusations of murder or assault. During this era of racial terror, mere suggestions of black on white violence could provoke mob violence and lynching. Yeah, see, same thing. Yeah, follow that case with Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. Yep, same thing. But that dude is, you know, the Edomite is gone. He's, as they say, pushing up daisies. All right. He says, though these communities had developed and functioning judicial though these communities had developed and functioning judicial systems, white defendants were more likely to face trial, while black people regularly suffered death at the hands of a violent mob without trial or any opportunity to present evidence of innocence or self-defense. Man, you know, and that, you know, they just passed judgment just because he was a so-called black man, you know, even for the same alleged crime. You got the same thing going on today. You know, Jake gets the fullest extent of the law for committing the same crime as the so-called white man does. All right, this is the book of Leviticus, going into that judgment. Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 15. And it reads, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness thou shalt judge thy neighbor. All right. Now it was an unfair judgment just because Jake is Jake, and you know, a favorable judgment, you know, always went towards the Edomite. Okay, like the article said, Jake always died. You know, mutilated a lot first, and then killed. All right. Back to the article. It says, on April 23rd, 1899, after Mr. Holes was turned into the authorities, a white mob in Noonan seized him from the jail and staged a brutal public spectacle lynching before a crowd of thousands of white people. The mob chained Mr. Holes to a tree, dismembered and mutilated his body as he screamed in agony, then set him on fire while he was still alive. Damn, that's that perpetual hatred. Let me get that. This is the book of Amos. (1 and 11). It says, for thus saith Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, that's sin on top of sin on top of sin, says, I will not turn away the punishment thereof. So you're going to be recompensed, Esau, Edom, for all your sins. You know, he says, because he did pursue his brother with the sword and did cast off all pity, had no mercy for Jake. Okay. And his anger did tear perpetually, continually. That's what perpetual means. And he kept his wrath forever. And we have that to this same day. All right? The same day. And you get to see it on film, live, on body cameras, you know. You get to see their hatred towards Jake. All right? Back to the article. He says, afterward, residents fought over Mr. Holz's remains, and some spectators reportedly claimed pieces of his bones and organs as souvenirs of the lynching. And man, you know, scriptures has another law, you know, Esau, you know, when you're not supposed to touch a dead body. I think that's in Numbers 19. Yeah. But, you know, like Psalms 50, chapter 50, verse 16 and 17, you know, pretty much paraphrasing, you know, he claims to be a Christian, but, you know, that dude don't obey nothing in the Bible. Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. All right. It says, going back to the article, with them souvenirs, yeah, you know, man. And you got a lot of them still have that stuff in their attics, too. All right. It says, back in the article, it says, black sociologist and activist W.E.B. Du Bois later disgustedly reported seeing Mr. Holz's severed knuckles on display in an Atlanta store window one day after the lynching. Damn. You know, his knuckles on display in a store window. Ooh-wee. Yeah, you got a lot to pay for, Esau. He says, this horrific spectacle of a murder went well beyond an attempt to punish any alleged crime. Instead, Mr. Holz's lynching was meant to terrorize all black people living in the town of Newman in the state of Georgia and throughout the U.S., where it soon became national news. And that's what they always did, you know. 9 times, a lot of these for thy violences against thy Jacob that we've done, you know, oftentimes they actually had the one who allegedly perpetrated the crime, but they would take him out and then take out the rest of the town, you know, just because. All right. It says, terroristic violence targeted the black community. Terroristic violence targeting the black community was common during this period when white mobs used widespread, unchecked racial violence to instill fear and discourage organized opposition to persuasive Jim Crow laws and other forms of racial oppression. All right, it says, news of Mr. Holz's brutal lynching spread quickly and far. A black man named Mitchell Daniel heard the news within days, despite living 150 miles away from Noonan, and reacted with more outrage than fear. As a black community leader, Mr. Daniel reportedly spoke out against the injustice of lynching and denounced Mr. Holz's fate. This soon made him a target. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Esau hates the truth. He hates the truth, especially when it's exposing him. You know, as the Lord said, he has made Esau bare. All right, let me grab that. This is the book of Jeremiah, Salakia, 49 and 10. It says, but I have made Esau bare and have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. He is being thoroughly exposed on this internet while we still have access to it. All his history is coming up. All right. It says, his seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. So he's going to come to nothing, like I read in Obadiah 1 and 18. All right. Exposed for all of his iniquities. All right. All right. It says, back to the article, it says, just 4 days after Mr. Holz's lynching, Mitchell Daniels' dead body was discovered on the side of a Lee County, Georgia road, riddled with bullets. Sparse local news reports attributed the lynching to Mr. Daniels' white neighbors, but no one was ever held accountable for his death. All right, and we always get this one when it comes to them not being accountable. This is the book of Psalms 73 and 5. It says, they are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. And we see that throughout history to this day, you know, for the same crime, literally the same crime. Jake is going to get the fullest extent of the law. Esau's going to get a slap on the hand. All right. He says, therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. You know, that's all they know. That's all they're about. Violence. You know, the scriptures say, you know, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. You know, what's the common denominator of killing, stealing, and destroying? Violence. Okay? In some way, shape, or form. Whether it be subtle or extreme. It's violence. All right? Back to the, it says none was ever held accountable for his death. However, you know, like we read earlier, you know, in Amos 1:11, you're going to be recompensed for those transgressions. All right? This is the book of Joel. Chapter 3. Beginning in verse 19. And it says, Egypt, and we know Egypt meaning, you know, the house of bondage, house of straits, you know. That's what, Mizraim, that's what, you know, we're in right now. This place is called spiritual Egypt, you know. Babylon the Great, a.k.a. America. It says, Egypt shall be a desolation, wasted, coming to nothingness. And Edom shall be a desolate wilderness, okay. That's talking about the land, you know, this land here, and him, his nation. Shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. All right? Yeah. A lot of Jake's blood shed in this land, going all the way back to the northern kingdom, you know. Northern and southern kingdom were catching hell with those U.S. Marshals down around the Texas area, you know, in the early 1900s. All right. So yeah, for the violence against the children of Judah, you know, that being the southern kingdom, you know, Judah, Levi, and Benjamin, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. It says, but Judah shall dwell forever in Jerusalem from generation to generation. What's that saying? Judah dwelling forever and Jerusalem from generation to generation. All right, that's us in the kingdom. All right, having those new bodies, having a covenant, you know, on our inward parts, never being able to go off again. All right, and then that's when we're gonna get busy, you know, on these nations. All right. Once we come back down, then, you know, we're established. It says, verse 21, he says, for I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed. For the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, dwelleth in Zion. Okay, how is he going to cleanse the blood? Let's get that. This is the book of Numbers. Chapter 35. Verse 33. And it reads, so ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. Remember it said in Joel that, you know, our blood was shed in the land, this land. All right. It says, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, the blood of the Israelites. It says, but by the blood of him that shed it. So yeah, Esau, you're going to bleed, you know, in the worst way. Bleed out, dead, kaput, gone, no more. All right. And I'll close out with this one. This is Ezekiel chapter 35. All right. And yeah, I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, moreover, the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai came unto me, saying, son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. And we know Mount Seir is the home, the original home of Esau, Edom. Okay? So Seir can be used wherever Esau, Edom is dwelling right now. All right? Because it's his home. All right? And then prophesy against it. So yeah, like Jeremiah 28:8, we prophesy against those kingdoms. You know? Prophets then and the prophets now doing the same thing. All right? Roughly paraphrasing. He says, and say unto this, thus saith Yahweh power, behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. And man, he said, I. So Lord is taking it personal, you know. But he's going to do it by the hand of his people Judah, like he said in Israel. Like he says in Ezekiel 25, you know, I want to say verses 12 through 14. All right. But he is against you. And this makes me think of that Hebrews 10:31. It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of living power, you know, because once he's against you, it's a wrap. You're done. All right. He said, and I will stretch. Yeah, verse 4. He says, I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Here's the point. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their calamity had an end, because, yeah, you furthered the affliction of us. Yeah, you supposed to punish us, but you furthered it. Like it says in Zechariah 1:15. It says, verse 6, therefore, as I live, saith Yahweh power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So yeah, the clock's ticking on you, Esau, you know, and trust me, you know, a lot of us are sitting back, meditating terror, just like Isaiah 33:18 says, you know, for everything that you've done to us, you know, you will be recompensed righteously. All right? So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Raha HaKadosh. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching me this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom, Kwame Asharala, Abba Babal.